Hello viewers and listeners, today we are talking with Dr. Bettina von Stamm about smart cities. Bettina has been a visionary and leading thinker in the field of innovation for almost 30 years. For the last 10 to 15 years she's been arguing that any innovation hasn't sustainability consideration at its core is increasingly irresponsible. Bettina teaches, works with leadership teams, inspires through her keynote speeches, and enjoys writing. She has written 5 books. Bettina is passionate about helping to shape a better future, which has involved initiatives such as the Shift School, which sets out to fundamentally change executive education, and White Mirror, a global initiative that has set out to create a better universe for all through storytelling and accelerating technology adoption to help attain the United Nations SDGs. Also, Bettina is an advisory board member for the Global Institute of Innovation and the International Society for Professional Innovation Management. You can find more on her YouTube channel and Innovation Leadership Forum website. The links will be below the video in the description section. And now my conversation with Bettina. Hello, Bettina. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Alexandr. My pleasure entirely.
Bettina, are you living in the smart city, and what makes a smart city smart?
Particularly the second part is a good question. I've only moved to Munich a couple of months ago, so I believe that I know that Munich is working to be a smart city. As we've been in lockdown, I haven't had much opportunity to experience it, but I know that Munich is one of several cities that are part of a EU project that started in 2015 to work on, together with a number of other cities, such as actually Lyon, Vienna, Venice, Sofia, and Santiago de Compostela, and they are working on being smart cities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so what does it mean? Actually, I only know what they are working on in Munich here, which is around e-mobility. It's about energy efficient street lighting. It is about refurbishing houses. So a lot of it is focused around energy consumption, and also around transportation, easier access, reduction of traffic jams and things like that. So a lot of it is focused around, at least here in Munich, is focused around those areas.
Okay, great. Bettina, living in the smart city for inhabitants, it will be digital and physical prison like it is in China. When Chinese authorities divide people into categories, label people, and assign social scores.
Well, I mean, that is definitely, as you say, China is doing it. I don't think it is, when you're a smart city, you are a dictatorial city, you become a prison to your inhabitants. I don't believe that at all. Because with all technology itself is neutral. It's what humans do with it, and whether they, are benevolent and want to use the technology to support, to nurture, to help people, or whether they want to use the technology to control people. And it's not the technology, so it's not by being a smart city this is automatically what happens. But of course, there is the potential, for much more control, much more observation, like Big Brother is watching you, we are there already. So, but I would say it's not, it's not automatic. It's not automatic.
So, smart city will restrict our human rights.
Well, again, as I said before, it really depends. It depends on how the the city authorities are using it. There is absolutely the danger. There's absolutely the risk. And in German, we've got an expression, der gläserne Mensch, the human made out of glass, because we've becoming entirely see-through. You can't track us where we are going with our phones and with the cameras and all the rest of it. And the question is whether this is used on the individual, or whether it is used at the accumulated bigger data. So if the data is made anonymous, that you can say a person is going from A to B rather than this person is going from A to B. So I think, depending what is put in place, and I think one of the big challenges really is that I don't think that human morality and ethics, nor the regulation and legislation has actually caught up with technology can do. So I think at the moment it's a little bit of a the wild west of the digital world. There are no rules, there are no regulations, or very limited, at least compared to what is possible and what can be done and what is being done. So, but again, I think fundamentally it's up to the people who are using the technology, whether it is be used for the good or for the better of humanity or to control.
Bettina, in smart cities, will we work more or less? Because lots of people in nowadays around the globe work hard and don't earn enough money and don't have enough time to spend with their families and young people to create their family.
That is a very good point. I find it quite bizarre, because I find that we are polarizing more and more. Some people work around the clock and other people haven't got any work at all. There seems to be those two extremes. There seems to be very little ground. I'm not quite sure how much that's got to do with smart city, though. I think, well, yes, smart city allows us to work from home. And what I do think, though, is that with smart cities, each and every one of us has become more responsible, has to be, sort of, you go into the office, and as long as your office, almost it's you go in and you are there, and then you go home again, and as long as you are the required hours in the office, it's okay. Whereas I think the entire working from home that Corona has accelerated so much, it is up to the individual to draw some boundaries between their professional and their personal lives. And so it requires quite a different mindset. You can't wait for the boss to come along and tell you what to do. You need to know what you have to do, and you need to be willing and skilled enough to get on with it. And so I think it requires huge shifts in mindset from the employees and also from the employers, because the employers are used to be able to see what their employees are doing, and now they have to trust that they are getting on with their job. And it also means that for the employers, for the leaders, they need to be much clearer about what they expect their people to do, and they have to have much more trust that they will be getting on with it, rather than doing the washing or sitting in the garden or whatever. So I think I hear what you are saying about people working harder than ever before, and I agree. And I also think that the only ones who can change us are the individuals, by becoming more disciplined about drawing boundaries between personal and professional lives, which is, I think, a very interesting challenge.
Bettina, what majors will be in demand in smart cities?
What majors will be in demand? Well, I think, sort of a little bit connecting to what I said earlier, it is no longer about control and command, sort of having all the strings in your hand and pulling all the strings. It's much more about delegating, about enabling. The term servant leadership comes to mind. It's about enabling others, supporting others, and I think sort of this enabling others, I think, is a really critical factor. And again, like with working from home, the whole issue of trust. When you delegate, you need to have trust. especially as in the digital context, control is. I always like to say control is an illusion. It probably has always been, but the context we're living at the moment makes it even more obvious. And so I think what mayors need to do, they also need to be excellent at collaboration, because I think thriving in the digital world and in the highly complex world that we are living in requires, if you want to achieve anything, you have to collaborate. So it is being able to collaborate. That requires to really understand others, to allow more than one point of view. So be very open-minded, to let go of the idea that there is one right way, and by the way, it's mine. So it again, sort of, it's a huge mindset shift, I think, in terms of how we get things done, and that is true for the mayor as well as for leaders in organizations. So I think it's yeah.
Bettina, in smart cities, will people continue to depend from centralization of financial monetary system and governments which over...
Sorry.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of a disruption there in the connection.
Okay. And governments which overinflate money, devaluate money and labor, and create crises when they want it, and suffering of human beings from money slavery will go on. Or we will have changes at this point?
Another very interesting question. I think that sort of the barter economy will gain weight again. I'll do this for you, and you will do that for me, so that we are exchanging goods and services rather than necessarily using money as the intermediary that we've used for so many centuries. So I think that if people get upset enough, they will find a way around it. They will find a way of bypassing the official system. And I think the more you upset them, the likelier they will find alternative ways of dealing. If you think about what happened with money transfer, for example, it used to go through banks. Now you can do it for much lower rate, at a much lower rate, through your mobile phone, for example. So people find other ways. If you annoy them enough, they will find alternatives.
Okay. Bettina, what are institutional structures have to be established for implementation of smart city? I believe that much of creating smart cities or any other success will depend on collaborations. There have to be some platforms that facilitate such collaboration. So where people with shared interest can find each other in order to do something, and then maybe get support from the city authorities to enable them to realize their ideas. So I think platforms will be a critical part of the infrastructure, and of course available to the internet. I live in the center of Munich, and yet the internet is not always working the way it should. And unless that is actually a given, it becomes very difficult to collaborate. And also, if the internet is not working, then much of a smart city will not working, because it relies on the transmission of data. And might be transmitted in other ways, but the internet is still the most common way of transmitting data. Yeah, Bettina, treatment and medicine at all will be more affordable to people in smart city than in our days.
Yes, well, I think I would not necessarily tie that to smart cities. It's just more tied to the digital world in general. With medical care, medical information being available in at your fingertips. You can connect to a doctor. You might be able to connect to a specialist that is based in a different country or even on a different continent. So I think that will definitely improve the accessibility and hopefully also the quality. At the same time, of course, one of the biggest challenges I think we are facing with this, again, not only with smart cities, but in the digital world, is it has also become increasingly difficult to evaluate the quality of something. Whereas in the past, there were certain standards that were easy to recognize. If you go to the town's hospital, you can assume a certain level or a certain standard. Now, if you find some medical advice online, it's very difficult. Is it credible? Are they just trying to sell me something? Is it real? Is it fake? And I think to help us understand and to help us to discern what is real and what is credible, that's not happening. It relies entirely at the moment on our judgment. And I know there are these Trustpilot, whatever, all these evaluation websites, and we also know that they can be manipulated. You can buy your votes, and you can, and on Google, you can buy into getting up the ranks on the listing, and of course that makes it really, really challenging on getting the best possible advice and being able to trust the advice that we are actually getting.
Bettina, how does big data analysis can be useful for development of smart cities, and how smart cities will collect the data?
Well, absolutely. I think the entire idea of a smart city relies on big data. You cannot control or constantly adjust traffic flow unless you've got the data constantly coming in. So you're relying on the data. You cannot understand the levels of pollution unless you constantly get the information on the pollution levels. So I think you cannot have a smart city without a constant flow of data and being able to analyze the data in a meaningful way.
Bettina, tell me please more about energy sector of smart cities.
Energy sectors of smart cities. Well, I think there is of course huge potential for what's already being used: solar power and wind power, and geothermal power. I think has got great potential. I think something I don't really. I'm not quite sure whether I'm the best experts to talk about the energy sector, because I know there are developments, like using or replicating the sun's energy production process. But I know very little about it, so I have a feeling it might be something that's interesting in the future, but I know too little to actually comment about it. But I think even with the other alternative energies, I think there is so much potential that is currently not being realized. And for example, with solar energy, I think that I am highly critical of the way that solar energy panels are currently used, because I've seen too many green fields that are being converted. I've been seeing too many forests that have been cut down to put up solar panels. And yet I think, particularly in the context of cities, there is a huge potential to, we've got so much built over space. We've got so many roads that are going absolutely everywhere and they're covering so much ground. We've got so many buildings, so many industrial buildings, all of them covering ground. And I think instead of, putting solar farms on green land, all these surfaces could be used to produce solar energy. And I think I also know why it might not be happening is because, the people who are responsible for roads, maintaining the roads, laying the roads, they need to collaborate with the people who own the solar infrastructure. And, there are people who normally wouldn't collaborate or you wouldn't think to collaborate. And so I think, if we really want to make most of what smart cities have to offer, what is required for sustainability and regeneration, we need to have this kind of collaboration between parties that would have never dreamt about collaborating before. But I think if we can achieve that, I think then the energy production can change dramatically. And I particularly like sort of one example, because of course with solar power, storing the energy has always been a challenge. And I particularly like an organization, which is called energy, I can't remember what they are called, but basically they've developed a way to use a building's concrete structure to store energy. And so I find that is quite amazing. And if we are investing in these areas, I think we really can completely change and revolutionize the energy sector.
So, smart city, in your opinion, is it a green city? And smart cities can improve environment?
I think so. I mean, if you think about a lot of what smart cities are about, as I said, it's about improving efficiencies and generally sort of energy efficiencies, which means when we are becoming more energy efficient, of course, it's better for the environment. And I also think, it is not only the environment that can be supported, but also in terms, of people. For example, if we are getting smart cities right and have a proper traffic guidance system or proper traffic parking guidance system, it means that people spend much less time sitting in traffic jams. It hopefully means that if we are monitoring the air quality in cities, we can, the instant the air quality gets worse, we can ask people not to drive anymore. So we can because the real data, the big data is real time. So there's not the delay that we used to have, where you have to wait for the data, then you need to analyze the data, and then you make a decision. So there's a huge time lag before you start to regulate a system. Whereas with smart cities through big data, you can regulate much more in the moment.
Great. Bettina, what the city is #1 smart city in the world now?
Well, I that's really sort of, I can only go by the surveys that I've seen and the cities that keep popping up again and again. And I think that the Scandinavian countries, so cities in Scandinavian countries, so Copenhagen, Stockholm, exactly. So some of the Scandinavian capital cities. I also think that Dubai is doing a lot of things in this area. Amsterdam, in the rest of Europe, Amsterdam and Barcelona is also one of them. I think Singapore always is right up on top. So I'm not quite sure whether there is one, because I also think they're focusing on slightly different things. It's difficult to compare them.
Okay. So again, Bettina, in your opinion, who will benefit more from smart cities implementation, authorities or average inhabitants?
So I think, if it is done properly, definitely both.
Because of technological progress, I think, will benefit both sides.
Yes. If it is done with the desire to create benefits for all involved. This is what I said earlier. The technology itself is neutral. So the technology itself is neutral, but how it is used will be entirely in the hands of people. And I also think, again, coming back to what I said earlier about collaboration, if you really want to maximize the benefits that technology clearly has to offer, then you really urgently need to collaborate, and you bring everyone on board and understand the needs and requirements of all the different parties involved, because that's the only way that you create sort of a, actually, it's not only, it could be not only a win-win, but sort of a win-win-win-win situation for authorities and individuals and the environment and the economy. So, but it is not by no means a given. I think you'll have to work quite hard in order to achieve that.
Bettina, how we have to prepare for living in smart cities?
Educate, educate, educate. And I think so, to help people understand, what smart and digital actually mean, to make them aware of the benefits as well as the risks and the dangers, to help them understand the degree to which each and every one of us generates data, and where it goes, what happens with it. So that we can ask, or that we can ask to have more control over our own data, rather than it sort of semi-automatically being siphoned off and used by other parties. So I think creating a great deal of awareness, so that people can make educated choices rather than falling for fake news, which is so popular nowadays.
Bettina, how do you see the future of ordinary cities in 10 years?
Well, I think there's probably a scenario that is fairly realistic, and then there's what I would wish to happen. And I think I'd like to go with what I would wish to happen. What I would like to see, because I know and believe it's possible, is that cities truly become places for people. And if you just look at many cities today, they are very clearly designed for machines, and particularly the car. And I think it was quite exciting to see how many cities have reacted to the corona crisis, and used that opportunity to also rethink the design of their cities. With Paris, there are many cities that created a number of new parks that have taken space away from the cars to give it over to nature and people. And so what I'd like to see in 10 years' time, that cities really become communities again, where people want to be. And I think for that to happen, it's also we've been so carefully separating out all parts of our life, of professions. You work here and you live there, and when you want to go running, you have to drive 3 miles to get to a park and all the rest. So we've been very good at separating everything out. And what I'd really like to see is it all coming together again, so that you can live and work and play and relax and do all. It is all within walking distance. And actually, I have to say the area where I live in Munich, I just noticed sort of there's a little repair shop there, and there's a little flower shop here, and then there is a little supermarket. So I find that here it already is a little bit, where you can stay in your quarter, and you can find everything there. And I think that's what I'd like to see at scale in cities. And I think, for me, greening cities would be one of the most desirable goals, because you can have green walls, you can have green roofs, you can have plants everywhere, and the good that would do in terms of pollution, in terms of temperature increases, in terms of quality of life, in terms of de-stressing people, would be absolutely amazing. So maybe that's my key wish, to cover everything in cities with a coat of real green, not fake.
Perfect. Bettina, what's your message to people?
What is my message to people? Improve your awareness, educate yourself, and know that being sustainable, or actually I think we need to go beyond being sustainable, because we've destroyed so much that we need to really get into regenerative mode rather than just sustainable mode. To realize that the responsibility for being regenerative is with each and every one of us. And that might be very small things like turning off the water when you brush your teeth, to just boiling the amount of water you need for whatever you are doing, to not throwing things out of your car window, or, you know, when I'm just going from here to the supermarket, I'm planning, I haven't done it yet, but I'm planning to get a rubbish picker and a bag, because it just really hurts me to see how much rubbish is amongst the trees and the shrubbery and all the rest of it. So just really, and, you know, do you need to drive everywhere? Can you not walk, or can you not a bicycle? I mean, there are so many small things, you know, renting things rather than buying them, sharing them. So I think that's my message, you know that the responsibility for creating a future for our planet is with each and every one of us.
Bettina, danke schön, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Alexander, for this opportunity. Thank you.